Thank you. Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us. I like to make a joke when we're presenting the topic of, you can present, yeah.
Oh, man. For AWS, we don't use Zoom normally, so forgive us.
Clearly, you can tell. But I like to, when we're presenting the topic of cloud operations and security at like 2 p.m. on a Friday, I like to make the joke that it's very symbolic of how some of our customers think of operations and security. It's like an afterthought. It's like, oh yeah, that thing that we should have thought about. It's like we saw in the presentation, it's the folks that are there to shut the lights off. So the topic today that we're going to talk about is accelerating cloud transformation, thinking early about automated operations and security. My name is Pragya. I work at AWS Amazon Web Services. In my role as a customer solutions leader, it's just a fancy way of saying I work with customers, guiding them to adopt the right solutions. As we said, a lot of the cloud is Lego blocks. So it's a lot, solutions is taking those and making them into technical solutions and architecture that actually meets the requirements for our customers. So I spend a lot of my time doing that. Joining me today is my colleague, Danielle. Go ahead.
Danielle Ruderman, also with AWS, and I'm a senior manager with the Worldwide Security Specialist Organization. So we're a global team, and we help customers think about security.
Thank you. So this is kind of our agenda for today. We'll talk about cloud operations, some of the repeatable frameworks. We've got QR codes on all of our slides. If you want to look at some of the links, deep dive into solutions, you can go along and do that. And on the cloud security side,
yep, so we're going to talk about cloud security being a broader concern than just for the security team. We're going to talk about what we at AWS have seen as a common denominator for success in cloud transformation journeys, and then talk a little bit about the frameworks that we have for security. And then we're going to share just some takeaways just to summarize the presentation. And I think before we went on, we wanted to kind of poll the room. So how many, do we have any builders, developers in the room? Okay, awesome. Oh, all right. What about security folks?
Yeah, we do both.
Oh, you do both. Okay, I love it. That's the way we want it, right?
that's
and
good.
then ops, IT. Yeah.
That's good. Perfect.
Right,
You're
doing it all.
Other than that, we are.
You're in the right audience right here.
I love it. It's usually a small crowd, but they're very passionate about this topic. They're like, we get it. This is the right messaging. So thank you for joining us. Okay, cool. Let me start a little bit when we talk about cloud operations. You know, this is kind of what we'll cover, as we said, you know, consideration, looking at it early, shifting left with your mindset. Think about it early. Don't start with your, you know, you've deployed your first dev environment, and that's when you're thinking, how are we going to scale this? Because it's already too late. So I like to start with this picture of, we often ask our customers when we engage with them, tell us about what your cloud environment looks like, describe it to us. And they describe it something like this. It's amazing, it's a beautiful structure, windows, you know, it just, you know, they are very confident in how well operated their cloud environment is. The reality is that when we dive deeper, we ask them some questions about their people, their skills, their strategy, vision, a lot of the things that we talked about. It turns out that it actually looks a little bit like this. And, you know, no offense to our customers, cloud is a very fast moving technology. So at some point, this was a beautiful building. It had doors, windows, you know, brick front, but they don't keep up with the paint. They don't keep up with the maintenance, or they do very little maintenance. Oftentimes customers don't know that it looks like this, or they didn't build it for scale. They built it for like that first workload that was moving, and it was perfect for that. But as every department has now moved onto that platform, it's starting to look like this. Or you're starting to innovate at a much faster pace. You're looking to adopt AI ML, and your platform can no longer keep up with that. So you just, it's helping our customers understand that it's not a one-time activity. You have to look at it as an iterative, continuous process. And the worst case where we see is a customer having, there's an impact to their business because they didn't think of this fast enough. There's, you know, that patch on a server that didn't go well and brought down the entire application, or that, you know, big Thanksgiving sale that your system did not keep up with because it didn't know how to scale. So just to kind of paint a picture of like what we see when we talk about operations with customers. I won't spend a lot of time, a lot of cloud adopters here. So, this is kind of how the business case for cloud adoption is made at most organizations. There's savings in the vision, there's productivity of their staff, uptime for applications, agility, faster time to market products, and then reducing carbon footprint. How does operations and security fit into this picture? So here I'm sharing a slide. We have a framework at AWS that we call the Cloud Adoption Framework, or CAF. There's a link to it. I would say the prescriptive guidance here applies to any cloud platform. It's really helping customers understand where to start, because it can be daunting. Where should I start? But you'll see in the foundational capabilities, operations and security is called out, and that is what we will be diving into today, because the rest of your business objectives, outcomes, vision, delivery really depends on how you have thought about operations and security. And some of these other things you'll see platform, there's overlaps in these early and thoughtfully, and that'll help you, scale your business as you keep going. One myth I like to break, and as we are many IT and operations folks here, we talked to a lot of customers that think of their traditional IT platform where governance and agility were always in friction. Like, how can you have the two? You're here to police me, you're going to make my life slower. With the cloud, that is no longer the case. So if you set up in the right way, you will be able to meet your compliance standards, your regulatory standards needed for your industry, while making sure you're also providing that fast agility and automation for your builders. Again, this is to say, shift left, think early, don't wait till you are ready to go to that first production workload. It's already too late. You're opening up yourself to security and business risk the first time you launch that first account. So think about it early. In the context of cloud operations model, I'll cover these three prescriptive guidance that we offer to customers: enable it, sustain, build, migrate, and then ongoing continuous operations. Look at it in these three consumable phases, if you will. And there's another aspect. This is, think of it from a people, process, and technology. You have to bring all three along to be successful. If you only focus on technology, we talked a lot about container first. You didn't think about whether your operations understands containers. You're not going to be successful. You will see a stall in your transformation journey. So with that, I'll start with enable, and that covers understanding your operating model to begin with. What that means is essentially when you're in the cloud, who's responsible for what? Who's responsible for provisioning your platform versus deploying workloads, building your CI/CD pipeline. It's important to understand what those roles are, and if everybody has the skills to play the role they're supposed to play in the cloud operating model. The second is around considering scale and guardrails. We talked about controls. What do your specific guardrails look like? Are you going to allow folks to deprovision CloudTrail? That's the way that you audit who's doing what. Are you going to allow folks to provision S3 buckets with open access or not? So make sure you understand what those guardrails are, have that discussion early, and think about scaling it. And enabling governance is around providing transparency to every division. Everybody understands what their cost looks like. Make sure you're tagging your resources so I can tell you at the end of the month, this is you, or you have volumes that you have never used and why have you provisioned them? So it keeps accountability high if you enable governance early on. An example of a customer that we have at AWS I'd like to share here is the California State University. It is the largest university by number of enrollments. And when they adopted the cloud, their challenge was that they had 500,000 students across 23 campuses that they were going to migrate to the cloud. So governance and scaling was top of mind for them as they were adopting the cloud. So, again, you can use the QR code to learn about the detail of the services, but Control Tower is one of our platform service that they leveraged, and it saved them time. Things that used to take weeks to do were being done in a couple of hours using the cloud technology. The second aspect around sustaining, building, and migrating is, look at your existing tools. You might have ITSM tools, ServiceNow, Jira. Think about how you will integrate them and what parts you need to integrate with the cloud. Think about that early. Keep your operating model application centric, because that's where your revenue is going to come from. It's not going to come from the infrastructure. So make sure, as your builders are thinking of architecture, they are freeing themselves of managing the infrastructure. Look at serverless where it makes sense. Look at managed databases, RDS, where it makes sense, so you don't have to patch servers. And that leads us to automation as well. Look at Terraform, look at CloudFormation to deploy your environments. You can couple with the cloud infrastructure as well as application very closely. And so you can have dev environments and prod environments running in parallel with the same controls. And it optimizes your time to go to market. And all of that in the end, of course, leads to agility and governance. With that, I like to use the customer story for a customer, Make My Trip. They are a travel service provider in India. When COVID hit, their business suffered a big loss because nobody was traveling. So one of the objectives for them was to increase the productivity and think of new ways of selling to their customers. So they really adopted the automation as well as removing the burden from their builders by adopting EKS and ECS-based infrastructure. So their developers were no longer managing infrastructure, but thinking of new products that they could use to optimize back to their business. So it's just an example of how customers are using technology to meet that outcome. The last one here I'd like to talk about in the Lego boxes, if you will, is around operate. As you're deploying your workloads, think early of what are the health signals you want your workload to send back to you. How are you going to collect it? How are you going to respond to it? And you'll tweak it. In the beginning, you might be responding too late. So collect more data, see the correlation so that your response time is early and you can have an impact to your customers' experience. And we do that through a lot of traces. At AWS, we have CloudWatch, CloudTrail, a lot of those services that get together to give you this visibility into your performance. This is one, again, we go back to our customers when they say, we're good, we're well operated, to say, are you prepared for failure? Just because you haven't had one doesn't mean you won't have one in the future. So continuously do these operational readiness exercises. And you can prioritize some, right? This seems like a lot. So we always tell customers, pick what's most important to your business and do them once a year, twice a year. Game days is a simulation of failure. See how your teams, it's almost like a hackathon. See how your teams are going to respond if a server goes down or you have a bad actor. Look at resiliency. Have processes. At Amazon, we have a process called correction of error, where you do have a failure. It is not punitive. It's an opportunity to learn. So whoever is closest to that failure writes a document about it, and it's circulated, and we all read it and learn from it. And then validate KPIs and metrics. I think this is really important for operations teams because any work you're doing has to tie back to your business. So if you're working in isolation, reporting SLAs, no one cares. How does this tie back to the business? That's what people care about. So make sure you're doing that. And in this context, I'll share the story of Thomson Reuters. They're a leading source of news information and one of our customers at AWS. In 2016, they decided they would build an application that brings together all of their news events and provides insights to their product teams. And they wanted to do this in 5 months. That was pretty aggressive even for them. But they were able to do that. They built it, but they kept the operational resiliency in mind. And the day that they launched, they had 4,000 events per second on their application. But they had to think of the time when the world was going through the US presidential election, Brexit, where the traffic went even further, double, triple times. And they didn't lose a single event. None of the packets were lost. None of the events were lost because they spent the time testing their operational resiliency. And that's important. And with that, I will hand over to Danielle, but I do want to recommend that you stay for the next session on MLOps, where we'll continue the operations conversation in the context of machine learning.
All right, so now we've talked about transforming and doing that cloud journey with operations, and now we're going to shift to security. So there's a lot going on with security. That's what this slide is meant to represent. Like, no matter whether you're on premises or in the cloud, you have to think about your identity and access management. You have to think about the edge. You have to think about your data protection. Like, there's a lot going on for security teams. And very often when we talk to customers about doing that cloud migration, the first thing they want to do is say, hey, can I just lift and shift what I'm doing from my on-prem into the cloud? Or what tools am I going to be using? What partners and vendors can I use that I already know? You know, they're kind of thinking very, very tactically. And so we're here because what we tell customers, we want you to take a step back from all of that, right? Stop thinking very tactically, stop thinking about just shifting your workloads exactly the way you know them. And let's think about what is the point of security, right? The security team is there to enable the business, right? That's the modern way we look at the security team. You're really there to be a partner to the business. And this is really important because in the last few years, and this came up next door, is security is a concern greater than just the security team. Like security is no longer just a problem for the IT department, right? And we're seeing more and more reports coming out to kind of drive this point home. So the PwC does an annual survey of their CEOs, and 49% of the CEOs said that cyber risk is a top concern for them, right? That's about half of all CEOs saying this is their number one concern. That's pretty significant. In addition, Gartner's done a number of studies and has found that cybersecurity is considered a business risk. So in their board of directors survey, 88% of boards of directors said that cyber risk was their top concern. Again, this is not talking to the security teams. This is not talking to the CISO. This is the business saying that this is very significant. And then, of course, we have the pending SEC recommendations where they're looking at the cybersecurity governance disclosure, asking boards of directors to document, what expertise do they have on cybersecurity? How are they managing cybersecurity in their organizations? So now if companies have to actually disclose this and document this, that means that is a very real business concern. This is actually a good thing for those of us in security because it means that security has been turned from this, challenge and cost center in IT to now all of a sudden it's something our boards care about. It's something our executives care about. And I tell you this and I give you these stats because if you're thinking about moving to the cloud or you're working with a customer who's trying to move to the cloud, you really want to take the time, if you're doing a cloud transformation, what can I do to shift that thinking, right? What can I do to shift the thinking in my organization about the importance of security? And this is something at AWS, we try to look at what the common denominators are for success when our customers do a cloud migration. And one of the single factors that really stands out is organizations that have a really strong culture of security are successful in that migration, and then they're successful securing their workloads when they're up in the cloud. And so this is something really important. And I think it's something that gets overlooked. Like I said, when people look to moving to the cloud, they're really thinking about lifting and shifting and tools and partners and things like that. We need to take a step back and think about what does the overall culture look like in our organization? And we're very deliberate about this phrasing. So we're saying culture of security, and we really mean culture of security for the entire organization. So when we say security culture, we're thinking more about the security team. So what's the culture in your actual security team? The culture of security is how you're thinking organization-wide. So that's a really key point to keep in mind here. And then we kind of break down 3 components for a culture of security. That's what we're going to focus on today in the time that we have. So number 1, executive support from the top down. Number 2, this concept of distributed ownership, that security ownership is distributed throughout your organization. And how do you do that? And then the last one is really important. It's this idea of psychological safety. Do the people in your organization feel that they can speak up if they think something's wrong? So we're going to dive in quickly to each of these. So executive support. So again, this is a quote from Gartner. And they're saying by 2025, that single centralized cybersecurity function is not going to be agile enough to meet the needs of the business. And CISOs have to reconsider what they're doing and empower the boards and empower the CEOs and the other executives to make their own informed risk decisions. And this is what we're seeing is that the security teams and the CISO are becoming the risk advisors to the business, and they're pushing out the actual ownership of risk and those risk decisions out to the different business units. And this is something we do at AWS as well. Here's a very well-known quote from AWS. We're always saying that security for AWS is our top priority. It's our job zero. And this picture is Andy Jassy, the former CEO of AWS, who's now the CEO of Amazon. We also have Adam Selipsky now, and they've been very vocal and very public, stating that security is the top priority for AWS. Like, we do not have a business if the customers do not trust us. It is that foundational to everything that we do, and it's been built in from the beginning at AWS. And this is really important that we get that public support, is because not only do our customers hear it, but the folks who work at AWS hear this as well. Like, it's very loud and clear that security is a top priority, and that's something you want. That's a real culture thing, and that's how we get that support from the top, is our CEOs are very passionate about ensuring that this is the top priority. We also have some mechanisms in place that kind of drive this point home. So for example, there's a weekly meeting. So every week, every single week, the CEO sits down with our CISO of AWS, and they do a security review meeting. So they talk about what's working well, what's not working well. And they do, as Pragya mentioned, the correction of errors. So if something has gone wrong, maybe with a service or something else, a correction of error report is written. And it's not written by the security team, it's written by the team that experienced the issue. So they have to own that issue. They have to do the research and understand why it happened and dig into it, and then present those findings to the CEO and the CISO. And by doing that, we really raise the visibility of the business to deeply understand the security posture of the entire organization, right? And that makes the point that this is a serious business level concern. And everybody in the company who touches this meeting really understands that. The other thing is that at AWS, we like to say we have a culture of yes. So traditionally, security teams, they're known for being the department of no, always saying, no, you can't do that. No, trying to stop everything. But at AWS, only the CISO can say no. And he would very rarely do that. It would only be under certain circumstances, right? Everybody else has to say yes. You have to find a way to get to yes with the business. Let's say the developers come to you, I want to use this new tool, or I found a code library I want to use. The security team can't say no and they can't block them. They have to say, yes, you can use that new tool, but you're going to have to go through a security review. Here's what the process looks like, and here's how much time it's going to take. Or here's some pre-approved tools that do something similar. You could use those with no time and no additional security review. So they're giving the developers a choice. We're becoming advisors, right? We're not telling them no, we're trying to dictate what they're doing. Now it's up to them, and they get to make the choice. Do they want to add the additional time in that additional review or use something else, right? And that's the kind of approach we're trying to take. Another story I really like is one of our CISO customers told us that he told his security team, every developer, it should not take them more than 3 clicks to get what they need from our internal wiki. And he gave that goal to the security team. And what did that goal drive? It meant that his security team had to go understand the developers' workflow. They had to go sit down with the developers, understand their workflow, what the challenges were, what they were trying to accomplish, where the rough edges were, to make sure that they were providing the right information in a timely fashion on their wikis. So if they needed to get to CloudFormation templates or Terraform, it should be really easily accessible. And so that CISO, again, from the top down, telling his team that they had to be a good partner to the developers, drove them to create those partnerships, right? And I really like that story because I think it shows a CISO encouraging his team to reach out and be that partner to the business and not just have that no mentality. The next thing we're going to talk about a little bit is this concept of distributed ownership. Again, this idea that security is everybody's job across the company. But how do you do that? It's easy to say, it's a little harder to do. So this is a quote from Mark Schwartz, who is one of our enterprise strategists at AWS, and he's a former CIO and CEO. And he has a book called Creating a Culture of Security, which is available on our website. And again, it's no longer sufficient to leave security in a team of specialists. Today, security is everybody's job. And its management, I like this, has become a strategic concern of the enterprise. And the way forward is for the company, the enterprise, to think about creating that culture of security and awareness of risks and controls, and what are they going to do to overall keep the enterprise secure? It's not just the security team's job. And how do we do this at AWS? One of the really key concepts for us is this idea of ownership. It's one of our leadership principles. We're very fond of our leadership principles, but we really drive this home in a couple of ways. So one thing is that at AWS, our service teams own the product end to end. They own it completely, cradle to grave. They own the P&L. They own the roadmap decisions. They also own the security for their service. So the centralized security team is not responsible for securing all of our services. It's actually the service teams themselves. And that's a really key concept. One of the challenges we found, which many of you may have experienced, is that you can never hire enough security professionals to keep up with the pace of the business and the growth in the business. And so we distributed that ownership for security out to the teams because they're closer to their product, they're closer to their code, they know what it's supposed to be doing, like they're the right ones to really manage it, and then we can act as advisors. And this is really key to how we've made this work at AWS by using a Guardians program, security guardians. Some of our customers call them security champions or security advocates. And this is the idea where the service team owns the security of what they build. And then AWS security owns the organization's overall security, and they're expected to enable the service teams to build securely, right? And I'm curious, how many of you have Guardians or worked with the Guardians or Champions kind of security program? No? Interesting. So we're definitely seeing more and more customers implement these types of programs, and have a little bit more about what a security guardian is. So a guardian is a member of this part.
We have different programs for different.
Security is something very positive, right?
Yeah.
Exactly.
So This is
Security
a.
Mavens, okay. Yep, that's another one.
This is a person, right, or a program.
The security guardians are people. Yes,
Okay.
they are individuals
So
who are
I think we call them security.
Yeah, you have security.
security mavens. Okay, that's a new one. Yeah, we've heard lots of different names. But the goal here is they're considered an extension of the security team, right? They're there to represent security. Some customers will actually take people from the security team and embed them in other organizations or other business units. But at AWS, we don't do that. We actually look for volunteers within the service team, so developers, and we train them to become security guardians. So there's two different ways you can do it, right? Place a security person into your dev team or get a dev team member to volunteer for that additional training. And that's the path that we've taken. And what's really interesting is that this was an organic program that came up at AWS. Some of our AppSec engineers realized that they could not keep up with the pace of the service team growth. And so they tested this out and did a little pilot. They got some volunteers from the service teams. They trained them on how to do baseline security controls. They trained them on how to do threat modeling. So they were thinking about security and starting the threat modeling really early in the process. And as it turns out, they saved a lot of time in that final security review, right? And other service teams heard about this, and they heard that this team over here has this new guardian, and they're saving a lot of time in doing the security review. And they raised their hand and said, hey, how do I get one of those? And so for us, this was not some big top-down mandate. It was really a grassroots effort that grew organically. And now it's a pretty huge program. We collect a lot of metrics on it. And I love to share this slide because I think it really shows the power of these kind of programs. And I want to encourage you, if you have mavens or champions or guardians, make sure that you're tracking data. So for us to date, we've trained about 2,000 software developers to think about security the way we want them to think about security. And as a result, we have 22.5 fewer medium to high severity findings during AppSec review. And at our scale, that actually translates to nearly 16,000 fewer findings since we started this program, and that's significant.
So is
Yeah.
this internal to AWS or among your customers?
No, this is just at AWS.
Okay.
Yeah, just us, right? And in addition, this all translates to time savings, which is really important to the business, right? If you're getting through those security reviews faster, you're shipping code faster. And for us, we found that the security reviews were taking nearly 27% less time to complete end to end. And that's really significant. Again, at our scale, that translates to 210,000 days saved in security review by having a Guardians program. And these are metrics that we track, and these are metrics that we can share with our board, we can share with the service team leadership, really compelling story. So this is something we like sharing these numbers to encourage you to start tracking things like this as well. And the last one I want to touch on about culture security is that idea of psychological safety. So think about your organizations. If someone suspected there was a security issue in your organization, or maybe they clicked a phishing link or did something they probably shouldn't have done, do you think they feel safe reaching out to the security team, or are they worried they're going to get their hands slapped or get written up? And that's that idea of psychological safety, that people can speak up if they have a concern, and there's no repercussions. This is a quote that's taken directly from the wiki for AWS security. So there's no consequence for reporting something in error. We would much rather investigate than never hear about it. And this goes back to kind of our blame-free security culture. Like, we're never going to blame anyone for anything. We want to encourage everybody across AWS to raise their hand if they think there's an issue. And we always tell them, if you think there's an issue, it's an issue until it's not. So go ahead and open a ticket. So we encourage everyone, not sure if it's an issue, a security issue, open a ticket. It's very, very vocal. It's drilled into all of our employees. It's part of our new employee onboarding, and it's constantly reinforced as part of our culture, is we want everybody to open a ticket, even if they're not quite sure that it's an issue. And this is something we definitely encourage. You want people to feel like not only do they know how to open a ticket and reach the security team, but they feel that they're not going to get penalized if they raise an issue that turns out to be not a big deal. This also goes back to that idea of making the right thing easy and the wrong thing hard as part of your culture. You want to look for ways to just make it easier for people to engage in the right security behavior. So if you think about phishing emails, for example, that's usually a huge problem for a lot of our customers. Today, a lot of companies put a big banner in the headline of an email that comes from outside the organization. They change the subject line, and that's like a nudge. It's kind of poking the person reading it. Look at this giant banner, like, pay attention, don't click, like, be very careful if you're going to click these links. And a lot of companies are starting to do that, again, to make it easy for people to think about security. Another example is that we have some new tooling, and more you're going to see tools developed for developers that help them do the right thing for security, like Amazon Code Guru Security, which uses machine learning to scan for security vulnerabilities. Not only does it scan for them, but in some cases, it will actually offer them plug and play code that they can put right in to remediate that vulnerability. And it will automatically close the bug tracking when they do that and fix it. So again, just trying to make it really easy to do the right thing for our developers. I want to share a quick customer story. So I've got one from GoDaddy, again, to illustrate this idea of making things easy for folks to make the right decision. So GoDaddy, users used to have to go to 10 different places to get their findings, and now it's all aggregated in Amazon Security Hub. So again, an example, making it easy for people to find what they need. GoDaddy has also used AWS Lambda to automate the process of closing tickets. So again, lots of tickets get generated in these security processes. You want to make it easy to close those out. At Amazon, over 90% of our tickets are addressed automatically. So we use a lot of automation, and we teach our customers how to do that as well. And then lastly, GoDaddy built some customized security tooling into their dev pipeline using several of our tools, Amazon ECS, Fargate, and Security Hub. And that allowed them, again, that idea of shifting left. So building security early in the development pipeline. So not only did they feel safer because they were finding issues sooner, and it's a lot easier to fix early in the pipeline than it is when you get close to production, but they were able to do more with less. So they didn't need as many people in the security team because they were finding issues when they were small. So really good case study here to some ways that they were reasoning about using our security tools. The last thing around psychological safety we'll mention is this concept of nudges. I mentioned with the header in the email and the nudges in the code, some of the code tools, is you want to find ways to nudge people to do the right thing. And this again comes from Gartner that by 2025, 40% of programs will deploy social behavioral principles, like we mentioned, like nudges, to influence security culture. And that's up from 5% in 2021. So we're seeing more and more organizations are realizing they need to build tools and processes that really help people make the right decisions. Now I'm going to shift very quickly from culture into, just want to mention a couple security frameworks that we have. A lot of our customers like the NIST CSF, but we do have some cloud-specific AWS frameworks that are worth mentioning. So the first one is the well-architected framework on the left. This is workload focused. So if you're looking at the security of your workloads, you would look at well-architected. And there's a specific security pillar, and that's where the QR code goes to our workload guidance for security. And actually, what's really exciting is we have a new AppSec focus area within the security pillar. So a lot of what we talked about today with working with developers to help them be more secure, that's built into the security pillar for well-architected. So you'll find some very specific AppSec guidance. And that's brand new. It just launched a few months ago. So I really encourage you to check that out. As Pragya mentioned, we also have the cloud adoption framework, which is, again, migration focused. So as you migrate to the cloud, and there has that specific security perspective as well that really focuses on security. So again, we have our workload guidance, and then we have our migration guidance. And the point of all of this, we're trying to get across, is that by building that secure foundation, so by looking at your operations and looking at security early, thinking about your culture, using the right frameworks, you can build this really strong foundation. And it's really important to consider this early in your journey rather than trying to bolt it on at the end. And we like to think that if you do this and you have that strong foundation, that as technology changes and we see some generational shifts, like we're going to say it, Gen AI, yes, all of our customers are very concerned about what to do with Gen AI right now. But again, we find companies that do have that strong foundation, they have a culture of security where everyone in the organization is thinking about security. Like sometimes this goes beyond the developers, right? They've trained like marketing and PR and sales to think about security. They've placed guardians everywhere. That wasn't me. And because they have that security thinking embedded across their entire organization, the impact of some things like people using Gen AI or playing with these tools, it gets lessened because they have that security first mindset. Or there's a framework built in that provides guidance and guardrails for new tools like this. And so we really encourage you, that's the reason we push these ideas, and this idea of culture and the idea of framework is to prepare you for what's coming in the future. And just a very quick recap.
Yep, and hopefully with the talk we had, it re-emphasizes the need for security and operations considerations early and not as an afterthought. We've shared some resources. I think everybody should have access to the presentation I think that we sent. So, the links are in there. Highly encourage you to go take a look at the cloud adoption framework. I think it transcends across whatever cloud platform you're looking at, but the foundational capabilities are really a good starting point. Where are we? Where do we have to go to fully benefit from the cloud? And then on the security front?
Yeah, seeking executive support. So using a transformation journey is an opportunity to encourage your executives to rethink how the organization is approaching security. And then establishing that idea of distributed ownership, right? Creating programs like security guardians, security champions, use the early data from those programs to drive the thinking and drive support at the executive level. And then psychological safety, like ask the hard questions, look across your organization. Can you do surveys? Can you do some kind of study to understand, do people in your organization feel comfortable talking about and raising security issues? And if not, then address that. And then the frameworks, those security specific frameworks we've already mentioned, they're very important. And please do check out that new AppSec guidance. I think it's really valuable. So, and with that, we're done. Thank you.
Like super.
Super.
Very interesting function. Our kind of security is actually in the other.
Oh, really?
I think I will share this with you because some like security guardian thing we haven't really like, executed well. So it's still like security team is trying to enforce a lot of things to people.
Right.
So I think this is a good idea. And then yeah, so
We have quite a few presentations on Guardians. So at Reinforce and reInvent last year, it's under the title Proactive Security, and I'm happy to send the links if that's helpful. But there were 2 talks, and that's where I got the stats from, where we've talked about how we've built these proactive security programs, and we talk about the Guardians. And then our Reinforce Security Conference we just had last month has an entire AppSec track. And we had MongoDB talking about their security champions program. And we also had Toyota Motor North America talking about their security program. And they're, so.
So
Yeah, we are.
guys, we're still in the meeting.
So
In the-
I have to ask a question since I know on the other side of the wall, Google is doing a presentation, and you happen to be one of my friends too. So I wonder if we track the AWS is kind of like one of the earliest player in the cloud market, and well, it's the leading position until today. I think it still have like a 30% or more than 30% of the market share. From internally, I want to see like the perspective of what do you guys believe the competitive advantage that lead AWS to be the position as of today, and also is that the same competitive advantage you guys think will give the company confidence you will keep the dominating kind of position in the next couple of years?
Well, I think I'll give my answer, and then if you have anything to add. The reason I like working at AWS is we try not to focus on our competitors, right? That's not, for us, it really is customer obsession. That is one of our leadership principles. And that's an easy thing to say, but it's built into a lot of the mechanisms that we have is we really try to work backward from what the customer needs. And I believe the reason that we've been successful and enjoyed our place in the market is because we relentlessly innovate on behalf of our customers, and we give them the tools that they need to continue to innovate. And I think as long as we keep that focus, like we don't get distracted by what else is going on in the market, and we're really listening to our customers and trying to build for them, that's what has made us successful.
Yeah, kind of similar answer. I think we also are trained. I've been at Amazon coming up to 4 years in August. We really are trained, and I've always been in a customer facing role. We've always been trained to like, customer facing, listening to customers, but thinking ahead, the things they are not telling us, what are they going to need tomorrow, and then builds, on that. Like innovation is a big pillar. We have a whole culture of innovation, like just as we have security guardians, we have culture of innovation champions as well. And you can train to become one. And all we talk about is innovation. So think about your customer, build on their behalf early. So whether it's IoT technology, whether it's building migration tools. So we have because we also know that there are still customers that are trying to migrate. Like there's customers that are testing out IoT and Gen AI, but there's also customers that are also trying to get out of their data centers. So we try to serve all of our customers. So I'm actively working with a service team that works on a tool called MGN, which is basically a migration tool. And we're trying to make that better too. So we're just we haven't dropped that just because we're focusing on something else. So just a long way of answering that we are always innovating for the next thing our customers need, whoever they are, small customers, big customers. I think that gives us the advantage that shows up, as you said, in the advantage of the market capture and all that. But that is not where we pay attention at all, at least at our level.
So in short, then it sounds like it's a customer dream, it's a customer success.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
But to be detailed, like, so is that the detailed
activity? Is that a stronger customer support service team or provide more variety of service? And what's the strategy of the AWS to achieve this customer centric? Because I can say my company is also customer centric, but with the detail,
I think I'll say we look at it from all aspects of the customer. So we're not just there, there's a lot of specialists that are bringing the technology aspect, if you will, to the customer, introducing them, doing POCs. But then we take that forward. Like my team does the customer solution. So once they've decided, okay, I'm gonna make a solution with these. I did a POC, it's good. Now I'm gonna take this to production. Somebody like my team comes in and helps them go to production. Then there is a whole different team that we have that is a technical account manager team, and a lot of AWS specialized support folks globally that sit and support their customer as they go to production. I think a lot of it is also augmented in us showing our obsession for customers, not just by technology, because you can keep pushing technology, but helping them in terms of like upskilling, training. We have so many of those programs, and also a whole army of folks that are helping them adopt the cloud in different phases. Not only am I there to do your POC, but I'm there to take you to production. And then once you go to production, I've got all these people there to take your call, help you with that outage, help you build resiliency. I cannot tell you when we have customers that have had an impact due to a failure, because we do a whole inspection with them. Like we said, the whole correction of errors, we extend to our customer to say, let's help avoid this the next time. Let's build that multi-region DR strategy. And then we'll go deliver Brain Special. So I think it's that giving that full coverage, that we're not just here for the beginning part and not for the harder parts. We're there for like the entire journey. I think that really is how we think about giving them that coverage. So it's not just staff, but it's really putting our people behind it.
So the DR strategy is interesting. Is it under security's purview, or is it just more like customer advice for the DR part, like you mentioned?
Yeah.
Is it under security team's responsibility, or is it more best practice design?
Yeah, we build tools and have best practices. So we have like an incident response white paper. We've got a team, like the storage team works on disaster recovery. So we've got different teams that work on the tooling and work on the like recommendations and guardrails. But it's, of course, in the shared responsibility model, the customer is responsible for securing and recovering their own workloads, whereas we secure the underlying infrastructure. Now we do have a team, we do have a customer incident response team that if a customer does have an issue, they can work with AWS and we can help them immediately triage the issue. Like ultimately, yes, they own that side of the shared responsibility model, but we are there to help them and advise them.
So does data security also cover like how to prevent data destruction?
Encrypt everything. So.
Okay.
But yeah, but I would say resiliency is looked at like when we look at our pillars, like the well-architected pillars that AWS has. Security is one, operational excellence is one, and resiliency is its own pillar. So it's like we give it the attention that it deserves in terms of best practices. It is a shared responsibility model, and if you read the well-architected paper on resiliency, it will walk you through what that actually means. What that means in terms of data, compute, storage. Are you well-architected?
Yeah, I think next door they mentioned that people are moving from this idea of risk aversion to risk tolerance, and we're seeing that with our customers too. Like a CISO just said recently, like I want to talk about security resiliency. This idea that I know I'm going to have a bad day. I know something's going to happen. It's inevitable. How do I recover from it quickly? That's what I want to focus on. I don't want to focus on trying to like block everything. Just help me recover quickly when something happens. And we're kind of seeing that mentality shift. And that's why we have programs like resiliency.
At least we're getting